Well, gather round, folks, because the 2024 presidential election, oh boy, it wasn't just an election, was it? It was more like a bizarre, slightly unsettling dinner party where the main course was existential confusion, and the side dishes were, well, we'll get to those. You thought politics was a circus before? Ha! This was the kind of spectacle that makes you question if someone spiked the national water supply with something a bit too whimsical. We were all geared up for the usual mudslinging, the endless punditry, the soul-crushing attack ads. Instead, we got a lesson in how easily the fragile fabric of civic duty can be unraveled by, of all things, snacks and songs. It was a symphony of the absurd, conducted by an invisible maestro with a penchant for chaos and dairy products. First, let's talk about Wisconsin. America's dairyland, a state known for its cheese, its packers, and its pivotal role in deciding who gets the keys to the White House. But in 2024, it wasn't the political rhetoric that captured the hearts and minds, or rather the stomachs, of Wisconsinites. Oh no, it was a cheese. Not just any cheese, mind you. This was the Gouda of forgetfulness, or so the whispered legends now claim. Rumor had it that a small artisanal creamery, perhaps run by mischievous gnomes or a disgruntled dairy scientist accidentally, or on purpose, concocted a batch of cheese so utterly divine, so distractingly delicious, that it made people forget minor things. Things like, say, where they parked their car, their mother-in-law's birthday, or crucially the urgent need to cast a ballot. Imagine the scene polling stations, usually bustling with civic-minded citizens, were instead seeing curious trickles. Meanwhile, blocks away, lines snaked around the aforementioned creamery, folks chattering not about policy proposals but about the creamy texture and nutty undertones of this, apparently life-altering cheese. Election officials, bless their cotton socks, were reportedly seen scratching their heads, some even dispatching runners to procure samples of this special cheese, purely for investigative purposes, of course. The aroma alone was said to be a siren song, pulling people away from their democratic responsibilities and into a state of blissful, cheesy oblivion. It was less about red versus blue and more about cheddar versus existential dread. The initial reports were baffling to say the least. Voter turnout in certain Wisconsin precincts was inexplicably low. Poll workers described an eerie calm, punctuated only by the distant contented munching sounds carried on the autumn breeze. News outlets, initially focused on exit polls and projections, slowly started picking up on these bizarre local anecdotes. Is Wisconsin too cheesy to vote? One headline tentatively asked. It sounded like a parody, something you'd expect from, well, a show like this one. But as the day wore on, the stories grew, painting a picture of a state utterly sidetracked by dairy-induced delight, leaving the political pundits to wonder if their complex electoral models had accounted for the variable of weaponized deliciousness. Now, if you thought Wisconsin's cheese-sident was an isolated anomaly, oh you sweet summer child, you haven't been paying attention to the sheer unadulterated weirdness America can conjure. Let's hop over to Pennsylvania, the Keystone State, home of Liberty Bells, cheesesteaks, and in 2024 the Wawa restroom rhapsody. Yes, you heard that right. Wawa, the beloved convenience store chain, apparently decided its public restrooms needed an upgrade. Not just better soap dispensers or those fancy air dryers that sound like a jet engine taking off. No, they installed a new experimental sound system playing music so inexplicably catchy, so hypnotically soothing, that people just lingered and lingered. These weren't your average elevator muzak tunes, mind you. Witnesses described a genre-bending mix of ultra-smooth jazz, ethereal synth-pop, and what could only be described as whale songs remixed by a surprisingly chill techno DJ. The melodies were designed, perhaps by some rogue audio engineer with a vendetta against productivity, to induce a state of profound calm and temporal distortion. People would enter the Wawa restroom with the firm intention of a quick pit stop and emerge blinking 45 minutes later, wondering what year it was and whether they still needed that sizzly breakfast sandwich. The effect on Election Day was, to put it mildly, noticeable. Many a Pennsylvanian, en route to their polling place, made a quick Wawa run, only to be ensnared by the siren song of the stalls. The stories that emerged were both hilarious and slightly concerning. Tales of voters found humming peacefully in their cars, having completely forgotten their electoral purpose after a prolonged Wawa bathroom break. Some even reported having vivid, pleasant dreams while under the influence of the restroom tunes. Dreams often involving floating through clouds of coffee aroma and soft pretzel pillows. Election officials in Pennsylvania started noticing a peculiar pattern. a significant dip in voter turnout during peak Wawa coffee break hours. Coincidence? Or a cleverly disguised plot to soothe the electorate into a state of blissful apathy? The truth, like the perfect Wawa hoagie, was layered and complex. This restroom reverie created a unique kind of chaos. Imagine trying to run an election when a significant portion of your populace is happily marooned in a convenience store lavatory, vibing to ambient soundscapes. Poll workers waited, coffee grew cold, and the democratic process took an unscheduled, musically induced intermission. It wasn't a deliberate act of suppression, not in the traditional sense, but it was an effective distraction nonetheless. The state that once rang the Liberty Bell was now ringing with the gentle, perplexing harmonies of its convenience store commodes, a testament to the unpredictable nature of human distraction and the surprising power of a well-curated bathroom playlist. But wait, there's more! Our tour of electoral oddities wouldn't be complete without a trip down south to Georgia, the Peach State. And in 2024, Georgia truly lived up to its name, but with a distinctly futuristic twist. Enter the Tesla Peach. Now, to be clear, these weren't peaches that could drive themselves, nor did they require complicated software updates, though given the circumstances, who knows? These were, however, a new, experimental hybrid peach reportedly developed in a secretive agricultural lab with loose ties to a certain tech billionaire's more whimsical side projects. They were rumored to have an otherworldly glow, an impossibly sweet taste, and a texture that could make angels weep. They also, conveniently or inconveniently, ripened to perfection right around Election Day. The Tesla Peach frenzy was swift and all-consuming. Pop-up fruit stands selling these radiant orbs appeared as if by magic, drawing crowds that dwarfed political rallies. People who had never cared for peaches, people who were staunchly apple-a-day types, found themselves inexplicably drawn to these glowing marvels. The peaches became an instant sensation, the must-have item of November 2024. Forget your civic duty. Did you get your Tesla Peach? That was the question on everyone's lips. Farmers' markets became battlegrounds, not for political ideologies, but for the last crate of these electrifyingly delicious fruits. The allure was simply too strong, a perfect storm of novelty, hype, and genuinely incredible flavor. As news of Wisconsin's cheese and Pennsylvania's tunes began to mingle with tales of Georgia's super peaches, a wave of national confusion washed over the country. Pundits on cable news looked bewildered, their carefully prepared analyses rendered useless by reports of fruit-based voter apathy. Was this a coordinated attack on the electoral system using unconventional weapons of mass distraction? Or was it simply a series of bizarre, coincidental events that highlighted humanity's susceptibility to a good snack and a catchy beat? The nation was abuzz, and not just from the sugar rush of those incredible peaches. The theories started flying faster than a conspiracy theorist can type false flag. Social media naturally went into overdrive. #Cheesegate, #Wawa Warp, and #Tesla Peach Panic trended for weeks. Elaborate diagrams appeared online connecting dairy farmers, convenience store sound engineers, and rogue fruit geneticists in a vast, shadowy network. Was it mind control, alien intervention, or perhaps just proof that when faced with the choice between a long voting line and a transcendent piece of fruit, many would understandably choose the fruit? The official explanations, unusual regional phenomena, coincidental consumer trends, did little to quell the rising tide of memes, TikTok explainers, and increasingly unhinged Reddit threads. The 2024 election was becoming less about politics and more about a national fever dream. Amidst the chaos, the laughter, and the sheer bewilderment, something rather unexpected began to happen. Once the initial sugar highs wore off and the last restroom melody faded, people started talking. Not just about the weirdness, but about what it all. These bizarre food and music-fueled distractions, as ridiculous as they were, inadvertently sparked a nationwide conversation about the very foundations of choice, memory, and democratic participation. Could our collective will truly be so easily swayed by a particularly good piece of cheese or an earworm of a bathroom jingle? It was a sobering thought, served up with a side of absurdity. The discussions went deeper than just lamenting low voter turnout in a few states. People began to ponder the nature of influence itself. If a peach could command more attention than a presidential debate, what did that say about our priorities? Or perhaps the way political discourse was failing to engage the populace. It led to debates about civic education, media literacy, and the subtle, often unnoticed forces that shape our decisions every single day. The 2024 election, for all its silliness, became a catalyst for examining the often unquestioned mechanics of our democracy. and our own susceptibility to distraction in an increasingly saturated world. Suddenly the act of voting, often taken for granted or seen as a chore, was being re-evaluated. Was it merely a perfunctory civic duty, easily overshadowed by life's more immediate and tasty pleasures? Or was it something more profound, a cornerstone of self-governance that required a more resilient form of engagement? The tales of the cheese, the tunes, and the peaches served as a rather potent, if accidental, reminder that participation wasn't just about showing up, but about being present, focused, and critically aware. It made people question how robust our democratic institutions truly were if they could be so whimsically disrupted. In the end, the Great Distraction election of 2024 left voters across the nation with more than just amusing anecdotes. It left them wondering how to truly, meaningfully take part in their democracy. How do we cultivate a civic appetite strong enough to resist the siren call of the next Tesla Peach or sentient Brie? The conversations continued in town halls, online forums, and over dinner tables long after the last crumbs were swept away. Perhaps, just perhaps, a nation that had briefly forgotten to vote because of snacks and songs had inadvertently remembered why voting mattered in the first place. Or, at the very least, they resolved to pack a less distracting lunch on the next election day.